a few trips together, and she's a great person. And Bob, I just got to know in the last couple of days. I've heard him a couple times, but I just really got to know him in the last couple of days. And you folks are in for a great weekend. I can tell you that right now. It's not only learning about the 164 pages, but they're fun to be with, and you'll find that out. That's enough for me. Have a good weekend.
My name's Bob Darrell, and I am alcoholic.
Hi, Bob.
And I'm sober today only through the grace of a God that I was afraid to believe in, but I've accessed and maintained in my life through the 12 steps, good sponsorship, probably more important, an ability to remain reasonably sponsorable, persistent and consistent effort in the primary purpose, and consequently I haven't had a drink or any mind or emotion altering substance since October 31st, 1978. And for that I owe. I am delighted to be here. I'm here with one of my favorite people, Polly. Polly sponsors half the women of Alcoholics Anonymous around the world, I think. If you're single, you might as well, if you're going to get a date in AA, you got to go through Polly, kind of. It's sort of seems to be the way it is. And I'm here, my sponsor's here, and I'm delighted. Any chance I get to spend some time with him is a luxury for me. I want to thank Jack for inviting us to participate this weekend. And he was kind enough to come down to the Hartford airport and pick me up. I saw him across the terminal. I was going to say hi to him, but I was afraid to yell out, "Hi, Jack," in the airport. Well, TSA's gotten really weird, and they have no sense of humor. I'm just curious. I'm curious to see who's here. How many people, not to embarrass you, but how many people are here within their first year of absolute abstinence? Guys, just raise a hand. Oh, great. Thank you. Glad you're here. Anybody here in their first 30 days? Welcome. Woo. Wow. Anybody here in their last 30 days? Every once in a while we'll get said, "Yeah, and I'm out of here." If I was leaving, I wouldn't admit it, because you'd be got in a room like this of activists, you'd get gang 12-stepped before you got out the door. What we're going to try to do this weekend is talk about our personal experience with a third of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the recovery portion as it's outlined in the book, and not so much what it says in the book, even though we may read a little bit from the book, but more importantly, our experience. I hope that this is not opinionated. I hope it's not academic. I hope it's what Alcoholics Anonymous is at its best, experiential. We will share our experience. I think that we live, I think right now there's more dialogue and talks about the stuff in the big book than probably have ever existed in AA. And, well, but I think sometimes we're developing a group, some people that are like big book technicians, and they've ignored the other parts of the program. And it's like a three-legged stool. If you only have one of the three legacies, boy, you can't stay up very long. You have two, it's quite a balancing act. And you have three, you got something you can stand on. And this is a third of the deal. It's not unity through the traditions, and participation in a group is very, very important. Having commitments and also the service in Alcoholics Anonymous takes some guys like me and saves us from ourselves. Well, we're going to talk about our experience with the 12 steps as best we can this weekend. I am a chronic relapser. I went to my first meeting. I was somewhere. I was either 19, maybe 20 years old. I'm not sure chronologically looking back exactly, but it was either 19 or 20, and I was in an institution, and I was made to go to AA. And the next 7 years of my life were the most horrific. The worst years of my life were after I was exposed to Alcoholics Anonymous. But I didn't know what was wrong with me, really. I'm one of those kind of guys that gets really in a lot of trouble, and I know it, and I know drinking is part of it, and I swear to myself and mean it that I'll never touch that stuff again. And I always go back to it eventually. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. What happens to God? What has happened to me that would always bring me back to that? And I didn't know. I sat in meetings for a number of years, and I could easily admit that I was an alcoholic because I'd, go around the room. Yeah, I'm Bob, I'm an alcoholic. But of course, I think with peer pressure and having all you look at me, I might have admitted anything. Because I don't want any problems here. I don't want any problems, especially in the halfway. I don't want any problems. The counselor's here. I don't want any problems. But I don't know that I really believed it. In chapter 3, it talks about step 1 in a way that means a lot to me. It's different than what they say in chapter 5 that's read at every meeting. In chapter 3, it says we learned, which implies maybe that something that's going to change continually, that I'm going to learn. We learned we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were real alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. And I think that is much different than just admitting it. I think there's a place inside me where it's beyond the cognizant chatter in my head, where you have your talk to yourself, a place where I just get something in here. I connect the dots and I know it. It's down in here. And Chuck Chamberlain used to say, I heard him say one time that this was her inside job. And I think that that's true. And I could admit intellectually that I was an alcoholic before I really, really fully conceded to my innermost self. And that was a long process. And oddly enough, as the years go on, I learned more about being an alcoholic. What I thought it was to be an alcoholic at a year sober and what I thought it was to be an alcoholic at 10 years sober was different. And what I think, it's like if I knew everything that was involved in me being an alcoholic the first week, I think I'd have shot myself. I mean, it would have been overwhelming. It was like, and I'm self-centered and I'm full of it. And I just couldn't have handled it, I don't think. And, I didn't know what they meant. But I had this problem. And it's a problem that I could not seem to escape. I had it since I was 12 years old and drank alcohol for the first time. And I didn't know it. And that is that I don't drink quite like other people. When I start to drink, I have this seeming inability to shut it down before it gets really bad. I can't just get drunk. I got to get drunk. And when I'm drunk, there's some stuff seems like a good idea. It's not a good idea. But you don't know that when you're drunk. When you're drunk, stuff seems different. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought I must have, maybe it was something, maybe even though my parents seemed like nice parents, maybe they did something to me. Maybe I was potty trained or something. Or maybe I just had no moral fiber. And I came into Alcoholics Anonymous in the early 70s, and I would hear people talk about something I didn't understand. An allergic reaction to alcohol that is coupled with, the allergic reaction to alcohol, allergic is what it says in our book is a phenomenon of craving. Silkworth talks about that in The Doctor's Opinion. And this was when I work with guys, I try to find out if they're alcoholic and can they see it. And we sit and we talk a little bit. I'll tell them a little bit about me and I'll listen to them talk a little bit about them. Can they find their alcoholism? Because AA is a different place when you find your alcoholism. If AA is a foxhole just to get out of the shells that are exploding around you, it's one thing. But once you find your alcoholism, this starts to mean something. And Silkworth says that he says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on chronic alcoholics is the manifestation of an allergy. That this phenomenon of craving is limited to this class, to us, and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. Well, Silkworth's talking about a type of alcoholic. First of all, he's talking about a chronic alcoholic. And, I've thought about this a lot over the years. There seems to be what you could consider chronic and acute alcoholics. And acute illnesses are horrible illnesses. They'll kill you. Pneumonia is an acute illness. But if you go to a hospital with pneumonia and they load you up with the right antibiotics, they can knock that pneumonia out once and for all. You're good to go. You don't need a sponsor, meetings, nothing. You're over the pneumonia. But if you have a chronic illness such as diabetes, certain types of heart disease, or chronic alcoholism, the physical stabilization of the condition is but a beginning in a lifetime of treatment. And I'm that guy. And I didn't know I was that guy. And Silkworth says if these chronic alcoholics can never safely use alcohol in any form at all, and this phenomenon of craving, I remember hearing people talk about that. And I don't get it. I mean, I know I'm in trouble. I know I get drunk too much. I go a little too far. I do some weird, I get that. But I cannot identify a craving in me. I don't drink and claw the walls to get another drink. I don't get a craving. And I don't know that I got a disease that uses my own mind against me. And I can't see it. And the beauty of Alcoholics Anonymous for a guy like me is that you talk about you and I learn about me. You can't tell me directly about me. I'm too defended. But I'll sit in meetings and you'll just be sharing your experience and my defense mechanisms are down and I'll start to connect with myself through your experience. And that's a beautiful thing for a guy who's very defended. And I sat in a meeting and listened to a woman share her experience with a dinner party. And oh my God, it was like the lights went on. And I remembered a situation that had happened to me when I was about 18 years old. Now, when I'm 18 years old, you could have put me on a lie detector and said, Bob, is there any way in the world you could possibly be alcoholic? And I would have said, absolutely not. And I bet you it would have said I was telling the truth. I was going through the long-haired, better living through chemistry, want to be a rock star stage of my alcoholism. But alcoholism doesn't care if you did other drugs. Alcoholism doesn't care if you even believe you're alcoholic. If you're alcoholic whether you believe it or not. And I was alcoholic. But I don't believe I'm alcoholic, and I don't want to be an alcoholic. I had members of my family that are alcoholic. I had an uncle. Oh, I hated him. I ain't going to be like that. But I had alcoholism. And I'm dating this girl, and she invites me over to her parents' house for the evening, and we're going to spend the whole night there. They made a nice dinner, and I'm always a little sensitive. I always feel like, I don't know, I don't like people looking at me when I'm sober. But I went sober, trying to be a good guy, and sit down at that dinner table, and they bring out a little bottle of wine. Not the kind of bottle of wine you and I'd buy. This is a little Al-Anon kind of bottle of wine. You know what I mean? Like a little nothing kind of bottle of wine. I mean, it was only about 13% alcohol, which is a waste right away. And they bring it out and they pour us all a drink, all a glass of wine out of this bottle of wine. And I've always drank quickly. I don't know why. I guess maybe evaporation, some childhood issue with me or something. I don't know. But I drink fast. And because I drink fast, I killed two glasses out of that bottle of wine. The bottle's empty. They're still sipping on their first glass. And I'm sitting there. I don't know nothing about alcoholism. I don't know about phenomena, craving, or allergy. I don't know any of that. But I'm sitting there and I got 2 glasses of wine in me. And I'm sitting there getting a little kind of antsy. And the conversation at the dinner table that a few minutes before was okay, now is starting to become irritating and tedious and stupid, really stupid. But I don't say anything because I'm a nice guy, just sitting there. I feel like I'm just gotta get out of here. And what I really want's another glass of wine. So I said to him, God, that was good wine. Do you have any more? And they said, no, we don't. And they went back to talking about Vietnam and sports and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there and I'm squirmy. I got 2 glasses of wine in me. Now, I don't know about alcoholism, but I ain't right. And I'm sitting there. You know how you talk to yourself in your head? Well, it's getting a little panicky in here. And I blurted out. I said, I really like beer. And they said, well, we don't have any beer. Next time you come over, Bob, we'll get you a 6-pack of beer. And they went back to talking. And I'm sitting there, and I feel like I'm going to lose my mind. And I finally excused myself, went to the bathroom, locked the door like a crazy person, went through their cabinets. I found a bottle of cough medicine that was 35% alcohol with codeine and terpene hydrate, which is a bonus, and sat on the edge of that bathtub and chugged that bottle of cough medicine down like a crazy person. And all that spinning in my head just went, and I was able to sit there and compose myself and think straight again. And I came up with a story, went back out to that dinner table, explained to them about something I'd forgotten about that I had to take care of. I was so sorry I had to leave. I went out in front of their house, got in my car, drove down their street 20, 25 miles an hour like you're supposed to, turned the corner, and then drove like an absolute nutcase at about 80 miles an hour to get to my friend Brett's house because he had a bar in the basement because I had 2 glasses of wine. Now, I was the only person at that dinner table that had alcoholism. Those other people had alcoholism. We might have all been in that bathroom looking through those cabinets. But something happens to me that doesn't happen and never, ever, ever happens to non-alcoholics. And that is when I ingest alcohol and I start to feel the effect of it, I break out in an irresistible yearning for more of that feeling. I have always had that. I have never not had that effect from alcohol. I hear people in Alcoholics Anonymous that talk about how they crossed over a line into that. Well, I had that from day one. I've always wanted more. I've watched non-alcoholics drink. My daughter, thank God, is not an alcoholic. My sister is not an alcoholic. And I've watched my sister drink alcohol for years. I mean, I've watched my sister drink alcohol like your cat will watch you eat a tuna fish sandwich. I mean, I'm watching her, I just get a little vicarious. I try to get her drunk. She won't go. She will not get drunk. And my sister, first of all, takes her 20 minutes, 30 minutes to drink one drink. I mean, that's bizarre. I don't say nothing, but I want to go, come on, I don't say nothing. And she'll order a second drink often and drink about 2/3 of it, sometimes half of it. She rarely will even finish the second drink. And then she'll push it aside and she'll say, I'm starting to feel it. I said, yeah. I mean, that's the point, isn't it? I mean, just she drinks alcohol, and as the effect starts to hit her, she likes a little bit of that effect, but she goes, whoa, 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 whoa. And she shuts her right down. I get to the same point where I'm starting to feel it, and inside me, my reaction to alcohol is very different than my sister's. It lights something up that just goes, oh, yeah. Whoa. I'm buckled in ready now. I mean, but my sister has a sane reaction to alcohol because she feels the truth. She feels like she's losing control because she's experiencing the effect of an intoxicant. But I got alcoholism. And when I start to feel that same thing, I feel like I'm getting control. I feel like I'm about, maybe on the next drink, I'm going to become so wonderful, you're not going to be able to stand it. I drank most of my drinking with a sense of urgency. I'm not really there, but I'm so close to there, I can almost touch it. You know what I mean? So I drank one more. And I don't know if I ever got there. I'd come to thinking I must have. And I've always had that. I've never not had that. I've never once in all those years ever been in a bar shooting pool with my buddies, drinking pitchers and shots, and after about an hour, have one of the guys or even the bartender say, hey, Bob, you run another one? I have never known the experience of sitting there and thinking to myself, nah, this is good. I'm good, thanks. It's always one more. And if you if you can't get enough, you're bound and compelled to have too much. And that seemed to be the story of my life. I'd start and I can't stop. I could tell myself, okay, 2 more. And then I better not. After two, that's it. But when you get to the second one, you realize that it was the wrong number. It was 4. And I don't know that alcoholism uses my own mind against me, and my total ability to rationalize and justify and minimize the earlier commitment to not go too far, all of that. And it punks me out and makes me think that this another drink, I know I said 2, but this third one is my idea. See, I think it's my idea. I don't know that I have an allergic reaction to alcohol, that once I start, I can't stop. And if you're an alcoholic of my type, and I don't mean to be crude, but I don't know a better way to say it. If you pick up a drink, it's like having sex with a gorilla. You ain't done till the gorilla's done. I mean, you can tell yourself all night long, I'm just going to go over there, me and that gorilla are going to have a dance. No, you're not. It's going to be bad. And it was always that way for me. I don't know what it's like to social drink. Well, that in and of itself wouldn't be so bad. I mean, if that's all there was to alcoholism, then it would kind of be an acute condition. Then that Nancy Reagan just say no thing would kind of, you'd take me through a treatment center, explain it to me, show me through my own experience. Bob, you can't take the first drink. That's why you're in trouble. That's why you go to jail. That's why. And I'd wake up to that. Maybe I'd test the water once or twice, but I'd eventually get, okay, I get it. And I'd put that plug in the jug and I'd go off into this horizon and I'd be good to go. I'd just say no. Maybe put a little thing on my mirror. Remember, Bob, don't drink today. To remind me, because you can forget. And I'd be good to go. But there's another aspect to this disease, and it's hideous. And it's what always takes a guy like me back to drinking, even when I've sworn to myself and meant it that I'll never touch it again. I'm just curious, can I see a show of hands of people besides myself that have ever got to a point where you get it, you got to stop this, and you swore to yourself you're never going to touch it again and went back to it after you swore to yourself? Anybody? All right. I'm glad there's a lot of hands, because if everybody just sat there and shook their head, I'd think, oh, this is Al-Anon, isn't it? Well, so what happens to us that drives us insane? I mean, when you think about it, if you understand, if 3-4 treatment centers, I mean, you've can now lip sync a Father Martin movie. You've listened to the doctors talk about alcoholism. You've got the whole deal. You get it. And you've sworn to yourself you're never going to touch that stuff again. What must happen to me that drives me so out of my freaking mind that I go pick up the thing that I know is going to destroy me? I mean, it's crazy, kind of. If you had a friend that just every once in a while just was compelled to poke himself in the eye with a sharp stick, you'd think this guy should be locked up. And yet I've had runs that I think it might have been kinder to my mother and father if I'd just poked my eye out. It might have been kinder to the way I felt about myself. Some of the people that tried to love me. So what happens? Well, in the bottom of this same page in the doctor's opinion, Silkworth starts to talk about what happens to me when I stop drinking. And this will sound so weird in a program that kind of, where you come here and you think alcohol is the problem, and it is, and it's more than that. There's something that happens to me when I get sober. For all practical purposes, my alcoholism really starts where the bottle ends. It's the insanity of my abstinence that is really going to kill me. And because of that, I need everything in AA. I need it all. I need a sponsor. I need commitments. I need the steps. I need the fellowship. I need service. I need the whole kit and caboodle. And Silkworth talks about the bottom of this page. he says, he's talking about us once we're sober, and he says that I become restless, irritable, and discontented unless I can again experience that sense of ease and comfort that I had once upon a time found in taking a few drinks. Now, at the end of my drinking, there's not much ease and comfort left in the bottle. There's patheticness and self-pity and depression. But at one time, it was glorious. And one time it was more, I don't think ease and comfort does it justice. At one time it was magic. In the early days of my drinking, you take a guy like me who doesn't fit anywhere, and I can't talk to girls, I can't dance, I'm too clumsy shooting pool, I can't play music with people, I just don't belong anywhere, and you get me half lit up and I'm free. I'm free to be what I've always yearned to be, and that's a part of and connected. I mean, my God, the early days of drinking, it was such a magical thing. I could get about half lit up and I could dance. And I don't know how to dance, but man, you get me drunk, the rhythm of the universe flows through me. I could shoot pool. I'd get in some kind of zone where I can't miss. I could be funny. I mean, I'd get me half lit up. I'm fun. I'd crack me up. I'm funny. I could be deep and philosophical, almost if I would have been more religiously minded, I guess I would have been spiritual. But I remember just feeling like, just see it like you could see the big picture, you know, and I could see how the connectivity of everything in the universe and how everything's one. And I remember saying to a bunch of guys one night, late at night, about 3 a.m., we're drinking wine and smoking reefer. And I remember saying to these guys, this is what Buddha saw. You know, it's like you get to, I mean, that's amazing. So it's more than ease and comfort. It's almost like it completes me, or almost completes me. It's wonderful. Now, I get sober. The problem is I'm sober and I'm back to being me again. And I'm restless. And it's a vague restlessness. It's very hard to identify at times because it's a vague gnawing feeling. It's just this sense that wherever I am, it's not really where I need to be. I don't know where I need to be. It's just not here. You ever watch a dog walk around a living room until it finds its spot to lay down? I'm a dog that can't find its spot. I don't know why. I can't get settled or feel settled anywhere. And the second thing, Sokor says, we're irritable. And I can't even admit to myself that I'm irritable because irritable people irritate me. I don't like irritable people. And it doesn't look to me, in my internal perception, it doesn't look like I'm irritable. Here's what it looks like to me. It looks like now that I'm sober, I can see, and the fog's lifted, I can see clearly. And what I see so clearly is how stupid people are. You know, it's just, I go to work with stupid people. I go to the grocery store and get in line behind stupid, you can tell by what they're buying. They're stupid people. I get in traffic with stupid people. I'm forced to go to AA meetings. Oh my God, they got them all grouped. All the stupid people. Oh, you hear them talk. Oh my God, half of them sound like a Hallmark card in a recovery bookstore. Oh my God, shoot me, would you? They're grateful for everything. They love everybody. Oh, stupid people. And I have no idea what's going on. I don't know that. The truth is I don't have any sense of self-worth at all, really. But I've grown this gigantic ego that tries to compensate. So every time I stop having the relief from me with alcohol and I get sober, I just mentally tear everybody around down, hoping I could level the playing field. Maybe if I can, it's like the dumbwaiter effect. Maybe if I can pull all of you down, maybe I'll come up. Maybe I won't be so pathetic. And so I'm driven by this vacancy, this thing that's wrong with me, to just be so judgmental and so right. I'm right about everything. I am just, and you're wrong about, and I'm that guy. And then the last thing, it says discontented. And 33, 34 years ago, I heard a guy refer to alcoholism as a disease of chronic malcontent. And and that's kind of been sort of like a secret with me, is that I can't seem to get the satisfaction and results out of life that other people seem to get. What happens to me is I get sober, and I'm sort of driven by this kind of vacancy, this emptiness. I don't know that. I mean, I don't understand any of this, but I target stuff, and I target things that I believe are going to make a difference. And it might be that job in the steel mill, as I did J&L Steel. I thought, oh my God, guys that were without any education are making big money in this steel mill. Buy a boat, own a house, have a Harley kind of money. And I remember thinking, man, if I had a job there, man, I'd be there. And I maneuvered through some people and friends and got myself in there and got in there to get that job. And I'll tell you, I wasn't even there 3 weeks, and they're just stupid and they're not doing it right. You know what I mean? And everywhere I go, it's like that. But I'm always the guy that's leaving. And relationships. Oh, I had a friend. He was an alcoholic, or maybe he was an acute alcoholic. He was in a little bit of trouble from drinking. And he met this girl. She was amazing. She adored him. And he quit drinking for her. And he seemed to be okay. They got involved in a church, which seemed a little lame to me, but that's all right. He wants to do that, fine. It's okay. And I remember looking at him thinking, well, yeah, man, if I had somebody that loved me like she loves him, man, I'd probably be all right too. I think that'd complete me. I think I'd be all right. I wouldn't have to get drunk. And I found somebody like that. And 3 weeks later, boy, did I start noticing what was wrong with her. You know what I mean? And what is it about me that no matter what I bring into my life that I think is going to make a difference, the shine of it it seems to corrupt right before my eyes. It just seems to deteriorate and corrupt. And it always just seems to get stained after a while. And it wasn't. So I go through life like targeting things, going, oh, yeah. Oh my God, that's, yeah. No, over here. Oh, yeah. Wrong again, and I just go through life in this disillusionment, and I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know that I have alcoholism because it doesn't look like alcoholism, because I'm sober. And Silkworth says what happens is so many of us succumb to the desire to drink again. I'll take a run at it. Now, at the end of my drinking, it's pathetic. I drink and feel sorry for myself. I drink and go and cry in Jags. If you let me sleep on your couch at 4:00 in the morning, I'm on the phone calling ex-girlfriends, sobbing into the phone. We should have got married. Oh, pathetic stuff. I stopped bathing at the end. I don't care, because once all the fun and magic ran out of drinking, I don't care. And it's so horrible and pathetic. And then what happens to me is I get sober, and I can't weather sobriety much. And this restless, irritable discontent, these emotions and thoughts that seem to own me in abstinence eventually drive me slowly and incrementally insane. And I'll tell you this story. I'll turn it over to Polly. I saw this in a movie many years ago, and I really got it. It was one of those old Cold War spy movies where the Chinese had captured, or maybe it was in the Korean War, I'm not sure, but they captured this American spy, and he was a tough guy. He was a guy that's been trained not to give up information. And they were torturing him. I mean, they did a lot of stuff to this guy. They were beating him. They brought in electrodes and put him on his private parts, and he'd wither in tortured pain. And he still didn't give anything up, which was this is a tough guy. I'm the guy you just show the wires to. You know what I'm saying? And I'm giving it right. But this is a tough guy. And finally, this little Chinese doctor comes in. And he bows to the guy and he says, I'm Dr. Chang. you're going to tell me everything. And this macho, tough American spy says, Doc, I ain't going to tell you nothing. What are you going to do to me? Torture me? Electrodes? You did it all. I ain't giving you nothing. He says, no torture, no electrodes. I give you Chinese water torture. He says, water torture? What are you going to do? Hit me with a fire hose, Doc? I ain't giving. He says, no fire hose. One drop on your forehead. And he says, one drop? God, Doc, hit me with a bucket of water. I ain't telling you nothing. He says, no bucket. One drop. And the guy's strapped into the chair and he starts. He goes, ha, hit me again, Doc. I ain't telling you nothing. And after about 3 days, he'll tell him anything to make it stop. And it's as baffling to him that all the painful stuff he could bear up under, but he couldn't bear up into this subtle, gnawing, restless, irritable, and discontent, because it goes right below the horizon and just kind of gnaws away at me. Until one day, what happens to me is I can't see anything and think about anything except freedom. I just want to bust out. I'm just so tired of these emotions. I'm so tired of the loneliness and the depression and the worry of my abstinence. Now usually my life is better on the outside than it's ever been. And that's I didn't relapse usually when things were bad. It's after I had a car and a girlfriend and a job and a place. It's usually at that point that I'll burn my life to the ground. But inside, out here it looks really good, but inside it's and it's baffling to me. And I always seem to cave eventually. Alcoholism, untreated, drives me insane. Holly.
Hi, everybody. My name is Polly Pistol, and I'm an alcoholic. By God's grace, in a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, I haven't had a drink since April the 11th of 1977, and for that, I am eternally grateful. Okay. All right, thanks. I'm delighted to be here. Jack, thank you so much. And Jack's right, we've known each other for a lot of years. I think probably more than 20. Anyway, and it's just wonderful to be here. It's the first time I've ever been in this area, and I'm just delighted to be here. I have so much fun with Bob. I love it. And I love to do the book with him. I love to do this workshop with him. I love his storytelling. I'm always telling Bob he's the best storyteller. And I just love to do this. And every time he tells a story, I'm sitting there thinking about something I can remember about myself. So I'm delighted to be here. I love it that Clancy's going to be here. My absolute favorite speaker is going to speak tomorrow night. And one of the things that I love, and I've heard him for a long time since I first got sober, and I don't believe that there's anybody that describes what it feels like to be an alcoholic like you do. And I didn't understand when I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that if I wasn't drinking, that something would be wrong. And the thing that Bob was talking about, not drinking. And early in my sobriety, I got it when I heard Clancy talking about that. And it's like, oh, that's it. That's it. At any rate, I want you to know that I have a home group. And that home group is the West Connect group in Jacksonville, Florida. Those of you who know me, don't dare put my address and ink, because who knows if I'll still be there in a year. But we've been there a year and a half. And and I have a sponsor, and Dottie's been my sponsor for 31 years. And my sponsor has a sponsor. And one of the things, like Bob says, is that I'm grateful that today that I'm still teachable. And one of the things that I believe is really important is that I do have the privilege to sponsor other women and I totally consider it a privilege. But I really don't believe that there's any way I could sponsor if I didn't have a sponsor. So those are the things that I think that are important. How can I possibly give away something that I don't have? And so I'm grateful today that I am a woman in Alcoholics Anonymous who has been sober a while, who is busy in service, busy in sponsorship, and busy being sponsored. And those are the things that I believe that I need to have in order to stay sober. I am one of those alcoholics that totally identifies with Bill Wilson. I knew that when I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't know that I was an alcoholic, but I knew that I had a lot of mental issues. And I was a military wife, and I can assure you that I was an officer's wife, and I was married to a pilot in the Air Force, and the Air Force and all the military did not like him having a wife who was any problems. And so what happened for me is I was given a lot of medication and a lot of pills in order to keep me very quiet. And I've been diagnosed all kind of diagnoses. And I never, ever knew until I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that that was my problem. I knew that I had to be a chronic depressive, a manic depressive. Everything was depressed because I was a person who was so depressed. And so today, I love to get anything I can and read it on Bill Wilson because I understand that feeling. And one of the things that's just tons of fun is, of course, you attract what you are. So if I'm depressed, guess what? I get to sponsor a lot of women who are depressed. And that is just loads of fun. So anyway, one of the things I'd like to say, and this is not in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I believe it with all my heart, that depression is the highest form of self-centeredness. Because someone who is depressed only thinks of themselves. And as my sponsor tells me, Polly, you may not think well of yourself, but you think only of yourself. So, anyway, I took a drink of alcohol when I was 18 years old. I realize that that's really old now to take a drink of alcohol, but I took a drink when I was 18 years old. And I am an only child who comes from non-alcoholic parents. In fact, I never even knew an alcoholic until I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know that sounds really bizarre, but I've heard take an alcoholic's family tree, give it a shake, and an alcoholic will fall out. Well, if that were true in my family, it would have been my mother's father. But from my recollection, and of course we can't count on that, but from my recollection, he never ever drank like I drank. He was just the only one in our family who drank. I don't know. I have a theory, and there's no way that I can ever prove this theory because my father is dead and has been for a very long time. He died very young. But all I know is that my father was restless, irritable, and discontent. He was a rageaholic. Both of my parents were abused children, and they had a different reaction to that. My father was really angry, and my mother was all clammed into herself. The only thing I know is that my dad was so angry, and I believe that the only difference between my dad and I is that my dad just forgot to take a drink. It seemed like it was there. Now, I know that we can't say somebody is predisposed to the disease of alcoholism, but I somehow believe somewhere there's a genetic component. We can't prove that, but I believe that somewhere there's a genetic component because I seem to produce alcoholics. So I don't know whether that's true or not, but it's just a theory that I have, because what happened is I was one of these people who would look at my mother and father and say, there's no way I'll ever be like you. Now here were wonderful people, yet they had, as if they needed to be perfect in order to be my parents. And what happened is my father was full of rage, and my mother was one of these people that could never stand up for herself and was very, just very wimpy, is the words I used. And what happened for me is I became just like my parents. I was a rageaholic and I was a wimp. Both of those things together. And I was one of these people that would do really nice things for you. I think the book talks about it, manipulation through kindness. I would do all these nice things for you. And if you didn't appreciate me appropriately, then I resented you. And then I would go home and I would take that rage and anger out on my two little boys. This is the kind of disposition I had. Now, I didn't have those children before I first took a drink of alcohol, but this was the kind of person I was, rageful and yet couldn't stand up for myself. And when I was 18 years old, I married an Air Force officer. And I just knew that I'd found my knight in shining armor, and we were just going to sail off into the sunset and live happily ever after. But what had happened is that I had married this man. And I was going to have to learn to be responsible for myself. I was going to have to learn things that I didn't know anything about. And I was going to have to go to officers' wives' luncheons, and I was going to have to give luncheons, and I was going to have to do all this stuff that I didn't know how to do. And I just had these feelings of inadequacy. And then at 18 years old, I took a drink of alcohol. And at 18 years old, what happened for me is what it talks about in the doctor's opinion, that I took that drink of alcohol and it gave me that feeling of ease and comfort. All of a sudden, I felt like I could breathe. I mean, it was just, I could just take a drink. I mean, I could just take a breath. I could breathe. I have not been the kind of alcoholic that drank in bars. I did not go there to get drunk. I didn't realize that when I was drinking too much that I was just at a cocktail party. I was just taking a few cocktails. I didn't mean to drink too much because it wasn't becoming. It wasn't the kind of thing I could do as an officer's wife. I could not be drunk and disorderly. And I don't know if any of you have had to just not drink because you were in a public place and just hold on with that agitation, just waiting till you could leave this place and go home and drink as much as I could because I was going insane and knew my husband was saying, don't drink anymore. Don't drink anymore. I don't know. I don't understand the phenomena of craving. I don't understand what's happening to me. All I know is that I'm going slowly insane because I need a drink of alcohol. And what happens for me is I end up having two little boys. And I am a woman who never, ever should have been able to have children. I shouldn't have had children. I'm grateful that I have. God's taken care of all that. But I am a woman who was incapable of taking care of my kids. I am an alcoholic, and I drugged two little boys through the disease of alcoholism. And I know the powerlessness of this disease, the powerlessness of the disease of alcoholism. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, and that our lives were unmanageable. I know about the powerlessness. I know about the powerlessness of having these two little boys. And one of them's a musician and one of them's an athlete. And one of them's got a concert and another one's got a game. And this little boy comes up to me and he says, Mom, are you going to be at my game? Or Mom, are you going to be at my concert? Absolutely. And what happens to me is I take a drink of alcohol. And then I can't make that game, and I can't make that concert, and I'm passed out on the sofa, and this little boy is standing at the end of the sofa looking at me and saying, you promised you'd be there. And what happens for me is I go into a rage. Can't you see I'm sick? Can't you see I couldn't show up? Can't you see I didn't mean to miss your game? And the problem is, I can't not take a drink of alcohol. Even though I love my sons, I love my children, but yet I cannot not take a drink of alcohol. And when I take a drink of alcohol, I am powerless. I no longer can show up to that game or can show up to that concert. The alcohol takes me over. I no longer can function. Now I'm going to doctors. I'm going to the base hospital, and I'm going to doctors, and I'm told I'm this thing and that diagnosis and this diagnosis, and they're giving me this pill and that pill, and I'm drinking alcohol, and I'm absolutely, totally not functionable. Now, I don't go out to bars and drink. I stay at home and drink with these little boys. And their dad is gone. Their dad is gone for years at a time. And I am responsible for these little children that I cannot take care of. The powerlessness of the disease of alcoholism, the absolute powerlessness of not wanting to do that. And I love it when Bob when you talk about saying, I promise I'm not going to take a drink of alcohol. I promise I'm not going to do it. And I mean it. I promise. I look at that little child and I promise. And they're saying, Mom, please don't drink. Please don't drink. If you drink, you can't show up. And I promise I'm not going to drink. And I can't not drink. And that whole thing just makes me, I have to drink because I'm so guilty from drinking. It's just that vicious circle and that craziness that goes on in the disease of alcoholism and in the head of an alcoholic. And I love that over on page 20 in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it talks about the different alcoholics. And it says, what about the moderate drinkers? Have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely if they have a good reason for it. They can take it or leave it alone. I had such a situation. My husband drank a lot of alcohol. He probably drank a lot more alcohol than I drank. But what happened for him is along about the time we'd been in the service, about 18 or 19 years to be exact, my husband fell with congestive heart failure. And what happened for him is he stopped drinking. That was a sufficient reason for him to stop drinking. He had congestive heart failure, and that disease would later take his life. Then we have a certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. If a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative, this man can also stop or moderate. Again, that could have been my first husband. Although he may find it difficult and troublesome and may even need medical attention. But what about the real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker, but at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. And that was me. no matter what, no matter how many promises I made to children I loved, I could not drink. And I meant it when I said, I won't drink. I will not drink. And I end up taking a drink of alcohol, and I cannot show up. What happens for me is I end up, I'm not as bad as Bob. Bob's been in treatment, 8 times? 11 times. My gosh, thought I was exaggerating at 8. 11 times. Now, I've been in treatment 3 times. So, I'm a person who goes in, gets detoxed, and I love Alcoholics Anonymous. And my first detox that I go into, I have a car wreck in Irving, Texas, right where the Dallas Cowboys used to play football. They play in Arlington, Texas now. And once a Texan, always a Texan. I heard somebody else got sober in Texas, or maybe you're not a Texan, but once a Texan, always a Texan, a Dallas Cowboy fan. But at any rate, I'm a blackout drinker, and what happens is I call the police. I tell them that my car has been stolen. Here comes the police with my husband, and I'm taken to the Irving police station. And I get to see that look in the non-alcoholic's face that doesn't understand why we do the things we do. And he says, to my husband, why don't you just take her home and sober her up? And he tells me there's a treatment center. It's not far from our house, and he wishes I would go. And I entered that treatment center. Now, this was a county detox. This was not a fancy jitter joint. It was a county detox. But they did give us little tablets to bring you down from and detox you. And while in here, I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I loved Alcoholics Anonymous. I loved the laughter. I loved the camaraderie. I loved that. I loved the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. The fellowship was a huge attraction to me. But there was something inside of me that just said, Polly, people like you don't become alcoholic. I mean, I don't come from alcoholism. I would hear all these people talk in these groups, and I don't think it's any different today than it was when I got sober. But they'd sit around in groups and they'd talk about your childhood and stuff like that. And I'd listen to all these awful things that had happened to little boys and girls. And I thought, I understand why you're an alcoholic, but why am I an alcoholic? None of those things happened to me. And I just couldn't, I'm like Bob, I just couldn't believe that I was an alcoholic. I just couldn't believe that I was like those people. And this was a county detox. And I had a lot of arrogance and I was just thought I was better than. As my husband says, an alcoholic can lay in the gutter and feeling superior to those looking down on him. And, here I was. I thought somehow I was better than these people. These people had been arrested. These people had been divorced. I don't know how many times. I would learn about all that stuff, but I hadn't done that yet. And what happened is I just couldn't see myself as an alcoholic. Something else is wrong with me. And I understand when I hear people like Clancy talk about that. Something else is wrong with me. I'm crazy. Those, these doctors and the Air Force told me all these things that are wrong with me. It can't be this. It can't be this. I wouldn't do those awful things to my kids. I wouldn't treat my kids like that. I wouldn't hurt my kids. I wouldn't do that to my kids if I weren't crazy. I wouldn't do that. And then what happens is I have a jitter house romance where sick falls in love with sick, and you walk off into happy destiny. And we walked off into happy destiny for 55 days. And I was What happened for me was I was 12 stepped out of a motel room in Euless, Texas, and I was brought back into that treatment center more dead than alive. And now for me, I know what the problem is. The problem's sobriety. I know I can't live sober. Now, I don't know when I'm saying that. I can't live in my own skin sober. When I'm feeling that what's going on with me is I have alcoholism. That what happens for me is I'm worse if I don't drink. If I'm not drinking, I'm worse. I can't stand myself. I can't stand who I am. I can't stand the mother I am. I can't stand the daughter I am. I can't stand the wife I am. I can't live with me. And what happens for me is a 7-day detox. I can do time. And I sat there and I knew I can't live sober. I can't do what these people are doing. I'm crazy. These steps, these traditions, that's not going to work for me. I can't do this. And what happens for me is I guess I'm a good actor. The book says we are. And I look like I'm getting it. But what happens as soon as I'm discharged from that detox, I get a bottle of scotch and I get a bottle of Valium and I check into a motel. I can't live sober. I can't live sober. And if I can't be sober, I can't live. And I try to take my life. And what happens is the same thing happened in 1977 as happens in 2012. If you try to kill yourself, you get the attention of the authorities. And what happened for me is I got the attention of the authorities. And I was put in a psychiatric hospital on a 72-hour hold. And it was enough time for my husband to obtain a court order from a Fort Worth judge that I was a detriment to myself and others. And I was court committed then to a treatment center in Dallas, Texas. I am forever grateful. And one of the things that when I'm working with a new person or when I'm working with any woman and we're, and she's coming into the rooms and she's a newcomer, I pray that she has the gift of desperation. I pray that whatever's going on, that enough has happened, that you have the gift of desperation. And one of the things is I want to talk about the desperation. I entered that treatment center on April the 11th of 1977. And what happened for me is that I had been loaded up in that psychiatric hospital, and I took a drink on the way to treatment. And what happened for me is when I entered that detox, the director of that program said, as I'm running up to the nurse's station, I need tablets. I'm a little nervous. I'm starting to withdraw from alcohol, and I'm hurting and I'm having a hard time. And this man looked at me and he said, Polly, not this time. Here's a shot of Dilantin, and we're not going to let you die. But you need to know how sick you really are. And I'm grateful. I wasn't grateful at the time, but I'm grateful for the gift of desperation. Because what happened for me is 4 days in that detox room, I pulled the hair out of my head. I scratched up my body, trying to get things off of me. And I will never forget it. I will never forget it. And when I came out of that detox room, I was a raving idiot. And I said to him, you can't treat anybody like you just treated me. And he looked at me, he put his hands on my shoulders, and he said, Polly, if you make it, you'll love me. If you don't, it really doesn't matter. And I'm so grateful for the gift of desperation. And I see this a lot of times with people in Alcoholics Anonymous. And, we get in their face and we tell them the truth. And, it's not what they want to hear. It's not the gift of desperation. And what they have to do is just like I had to do for 3 times. They have to go out there and hurt a little more and die a little more and make it a lot worse. And now not only do I have all this that I've done to my children with the abuse behind dragging them through alcoholism, now what I've done is I've tried to commit suicide, and now they have that to deal with. These are the things that the powerlessness of the disease of alcoholism causes. And what happens for me is that I know that it talks about in the 12 and 12, this is the only step that I have to take in its entirety. I've got to know, I've got to admit to my innermost self that I am alcoholic. I have to admit that. Down deep inside of me, I have to admit that. And I can admit that. But if I don't keep showing up to you, and if I don't keep doing what I'm doing, I can forget that really quickly. So, we want to take a break? 10 minutes.